The city skyline sparkled at night as the most powerful business figures gathered inside the grand ballroom of a five-star hotel. At the center of it all was CEO Victor Alonso, a man in his mid-50s, known for his empire that stretched across industries. With his perfectly tailored suit and commanding presence, Victor represented success itself. As he stood at the podium, delivering his keynote, he spoke not only of business triumphs but also of the pride he felt for his family, especially his daughter, Isabella, a bright young woman full of dreams. She had been the light of his life, studying medicine with the hope of one day helping children in need. But life can shatter in an instant. Later that night, after the gala, the Alonso family's driver was taking Isabella home when a reckless truck swerved across the lane. The screech of tires and the sickening crash changed everything. The next images blurred into flashing ambulance lights, desperate paramedics, and the sterile white walls of a hospital. Victor stood frozen in the corridor, staring through the glass at his only daughter lying unconscious, tubes attached to her fragile body. When she awoke days later, the news was crushing. The accident had left her paralyzed from the waist down. The once energetic young woman who loved hiking, dancing, and volunteering now sat silently in a wheelchair. Her eyes carried no spark, only a hollow emptiness that pierced Victor's heart. Despite his wealth, Victor felt powerless. He brought in the best doctors, imported specialists from Europe and the US, and paid for state-of-the-art therapies. Yet Isabella's spirit remained broken. She refused food at times, turned away from visitors, and spent hours staring at the floor. Victor, the man who once commanded boardrooms and nations, now sat alone at night, his head in his hands. All his power, his billions, his prestige, it could not buy back his daughter's laughter. For the first time in his life, he was a man stripped of control, drowning in helplessness. It was a rainy afternoon at the hospital when fate intervened. Victor sat in the lobby, distracted, while signing documents for another round of treatment. Across the room, a thin man in worn-out slippers entered, carrying his young son. His clothes were simple, his face tired, but his eyes carried a quiet strength. This was Ramon Santos, a poor Filipino single father. His son, Paulo, was about 8 years old, with leg braces strapped to his thin frame. The boy's disability was clear, yet his smile radiated warmth that lit up the room. Unlike Isabella, Paulo's spirit was unbroken. Ramon approached Victor hesitantly. His voice was soft but steady. "Sir, I don't mean to intrude. But, let me help." Victor raised his eyes in disbelief. This poor man, what could he possibly offer? "Help?" he asked coldly. "Do you know who I am? I've hired the best doctors money can buy. What could you do that they cannot?" Ramon bowed his head slightly but did not step back. "I am not rich, sir. I am only a father. But I have walked this road. My boy cannot walk like others. Yet every day, he teaches me that strength comes not from legs, but from the heart." Victor stared at him, torn between skepticism and curiosity. Raymond's words struck something deep within him, something no doctor or consultant had managed to touch. Against his instincts, Victor allowed Ramon and Paulo to visit Isabella. At first, Isabella resisted. She turned her wheelchair away, refusing to look at them. But Paulo's innocent laughter filled the room. The little boy pulled out paper and crayons from a plastic bag and began to draw. When Isabella ignored him, Paulo placed the drawing on her lap, a picture of a girl with wings. "This is you," Paulo said with a grin. "You're an angel. Angels don't need legs to fly." For the first time in weeks, Isabella's lips curved into the faintest smile. Victor, watching silently from the doorway, felt a lump in his throat. Days turned into weeks, and Ramon and Paulo became regular visitors. While doctors focused on physical rehabilitation, Ramon focused on Isabella's spirit. He taught her how to see life through resilience, not loss. One afternoon, Ramon told her, "My daughter, when she was alive, used to say something, suffering is heavy only if you carry it alone. But if you share it, it becomes light." His eyes welled with tears at the memory of his late wife, who had died giving birth to Paulo. Paulo, despite his disability, showed Isabella how to laugh again. They painted together, played simple games, and even sang. Ramon would sometimes bring a guitar, playing gentle Filipino folk songs that filled Isabella's hospital room with warmth. Victor often stood outside the room, watching quietly. He saw his daughter slowly transform, her eyes brightening, her laughter returning, her spirit reawakening. She was still paralyzed, but she was no longer broken. One evening, as the sun set outside the hospital windows, Victor sat beside Ramon. His usually stern face softened, tears brimming in his eyes. "I spent my whole life chasing wealth," he whispered. "I thought I could buy everything. But you've given my daughter something no money could. You gave her hope." Ramon placed a hand on his shoulder and replied, "Sir, love is the only medicine that never fails. And sometimes, it is the poor who are rich in it." In the final scene, Isabella sits in her wheelchair, painting a picture of a sunrise. Paolo is beside her, clapping with joy. Ramon and Victor stand behind, their hands on each other's shoulders, not as rich man and poor man, but as fathers bound by love. Victor looks at Ramon and says, with gratitude choking his voice, "You've given me more than all my fortune ever could. Thank you, for saving my daughter." The camera pans out, showing the two families together, proving that true healing is not just of the body, but of the soul.